he matches up with Islam Makhachev?
He does well with Islam on the stand-up because he's rangy, he's tricky, all those. But on the ground, he doesn't. He does okay, but he doesn't survive on the ground. I don't think. I mean, well, okay, he might survive 5 rounds, but he won't get the best of Islam on the ground. That I'm 100% sure about that. On the stand-up, he's pretty tricky. So one punch can change everything on that. One kick, one punch, one knee. You know, so that's a different story. But on the ground, I don't see him dominating. I see him surviving possibly. So yeah, I could see that. And then the takedown defense that he has is decent, but not great enough to stop Islam from taking him down. But again, you know, sometimes we'll go in there and we'll decide that we're going to do this with Islam, and next thing you know, next round we'll say, okay, take him down now, or next thing you know, next round we'll go stand up. Because
Garry had this to say today.
In my ideal scenario, I want a 4th round finish. I don't want any early knockout, because then there's ifs, buts, maybes, there's excuses.
As you guys know, Ian Garry is a confident kid. Islam is unchallenged as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. When you hear him say stuff like, I want a 4th round knockout because I don't want anyone to say it was a fluke. I love confidence. I love a guy that believes in himself and call their shot. What I don't understand though is sometimes a person is misguided in their thoughts. They set themselves up for a very, very bad night or a bad result. I'm not saying Ian Garry cannot beat Islam Makhachev. What I'm saying is you got to take that as it comes. You can't try to say, I want to beat the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world in a certain round because I don't want it to be a fluke. If you win, it does not matter how you win.
Islam versus Ian Garry. My initial take on this was, oh man, it's such, who's going to beat Islam? You need a guy that has that one-shot knockout power who's going to catch him. Nobody's beating Islam by decision. But in what we've seen this year with Strickland, Hamzat, Justin, Ilya, all these crazy upsets, buddy, I'm not counting Ian out. I'm not counting him out. No way.
No.
Ian Machado Garry, I mean, he's talented as all fuck. I'm not one of those guys who's just going to jump on Islam and glaze him. Like, hell no. That's a great fight.
John, please, one question for Russian MMA fans. Islam Makhachev versus Ian Garry. What do you think about this fight?
Oh, I'm going with Islam because he has a wrestling background, and it's hard to beat wrestlers. So Islam, he may just be one of the greatest fighters in the world right now. It's me and maybe him. So I encourage him to just keep going.
Did you hear the news about Islam fighting Garry?
No.
Who do you think would win that one?
I mean, Islam is champion and he has a lot of experience, but I think Ian Garry has a chance.
Seriously?
Yeah, I think so. Ian Garry has to stop his takedowns, and striking Ian Garry is very smart, calculated fight.
Comes to this fight because, like I said at the top of the video, I actually think Ian Garry has a really good chance in this fight, and it pains me to say that. As someone that, again, I need to stress this, I fucking hate Ian Garry. Have I mentioned that in this video? And I'm a fan of Islam Makhachev, okay? But I just need to be real. I feel like Islam Makhachev is playing with fire by not having turned right around. He got offered a fight at UFC 324 after blobbing JDM, taking 0 damage, and moving up to 170, so it's not even this massive weight cut for him now. He clearly bulked up and filled out into the division, but still, it's not the same as cutting to 155 and turning right around, and he turned it down for whatever reason, right? We don't know. He got offered the White House card, apparently turned that down due to injury. And now we're hearing all these rumors that he's going to be back at UFC 330. Again, I'm going to build that card later on in the video, but I feel like he's given these guys a lot of time to improve. He's given Leon Edwards, what's this kid's name? Carlos Prates, Ian Garry, even Michael Morales, even though I don't think he should be in the conversation. He's given all of these guys time to get fights and get better, and they're younger than him, they're hungrier than him. And the biggest thing for me that concerns me about Islam Makhachev in this division is I feel like I'm seeing a pattern right now in the weight class, and I'm going to point it out to you. And actually, it makes me sad to accept this as a JDM fan, but there is just a certain build that is dominating this weight class right now, and it is the tall, lanky, well-rounded strikers. Okay? Listen to this fucking theory. Look at the top 5. Ian Garry, Carlos Prates, Michael Morales, and then JDM and Bilal Muhammad, who have lost to these guys, basically. You know what I'm saying? Think about what I'm telling you, right? Ian Garry, tall, lanky striker with solid grappling. He beat Bilal Muhammad the exact same way JDM did, except JDM did better, you know, whatever. But stuffed his takedowns, pieced him up. That's a good win. But he gets in there with Carlos Prates and he's able to match his frame and do well against him on the feet, outstrike him, mix in the grappling more effectively than JDM was able to. Ian Garry, with his build and his skill set, is able to beat both the guys that JDM and these guys can beat, like, and Sean Brady and Bilal Muhammad, these guys can beat, right? But also is able to beat the other tall, lanky, like mutants at 170 like Carlos Prates. Same with Carlos Prates, dude. This shit is fucking unfair, bro. This guy's massive. I saw this guy in person. It was like a fucking Arkham boss battle started when this guy jumped around the cage. He can handle grappling. We saw it against Leon Edwards. We saw it against JDM. We saw it against Ian Garry. He stuffed basically all of his takedowns. And on the feet, he's like fucking prime Anderson Silva.
Ian Garry and Islam. Love that. Dagestan versus Ireland 2. Ian Garry's legit as fuck. Yeah. Islam moving up. I think Ian's going to be quite a bit bigger, just frame-wise, confident. Yeah. And confidence is important. I know we saw Ilya, how confident he was, and that didn't pan out too well, but confidence is still one of the most important attributes in fighting. And Ian Garry is confident that he can go out there and beat Islam.
My defense and my fight IQ is second to none in this game. The more fights I have, the more people are going to understand and respect it. And I think that's why he's saying all these things, is he knows this is a tricky fight. And when he goes to bed and when he, just before he's about to close his eyes, he goes, this is going to be tougher than I think. And he can say what he wants to the camera, but to himself, internally within his team, they don't have someone that emulates my style. They don't have someone with these eyes. These are...
Islam Makhachev has dismantled every single opponent placed in front of him for more than 10 years now. And for the first time in a long while, more and more insiders around the sport are raising the same difficult question. What happens when the riddle he keeps solving finally has no clear solution? That's precisely the debate surrounding UFC 330, where the current welterweight king puts his belt on the line against Ian Garry, and where one phrase keeps circulating throughout the MMA world right now. This is the matchup that could finally crack him open. It sounds like hype until you consider who's actually saying it. This isn't just noise from casual fans online. Insiders across the combat sports world have noted that Garry poses a fundamentally different physical puzzle than anyone Makhachev has dealt with since jumping up from lightweight to capture the 170-pound crown. He's long, he's lanky, and he creates angles that most welterweights simply lack the build or footwork to generate. For a champion who's built his career on marching straight through opponents, that alone makes this fight feel genuinely unpredictable in a way none of his previous title defenses have. Let's lay out the groundwork first. Makhachev is currently on a 16-fight win streak, matching Anderson Silva for the longest run in the promotion's history. His lone defeat as a professional happened over 10 years back, a first-round stoppage that's been buried beneath years upon years of complete dominance since. He didn't merely rule the lightweight division. He dominated it so thoroughly that he moved up an entire weight class and still managed to strip the welterweight title away from Jack Della Maddalena. There's a legitimate case to be made that he's currently the top fighter on earth, and even John Jones, when asked for his take on this bout, backed Makhachev, emphasizing just how nearly impossible it is to defeat someone with his caliber of wrestling background, which makes Garry's self-assurance all the more fascinating. He isn't walking into this like a massive underdog, simply hoping to survive and steal a scorecard win. He stated outright that his dream scenario isn't even a quick finish. He wants 4 complete rounds of dominance before ending things in round 4, specifically so nobody can dismiss it as a lucky early stoppage. That's not the mentality of a fighter who feels overmatched. That's the mentality of someone who truly believes he's cracked the code. So what exactly does that code look like? Garry's approach is built around tools that Makhachev has almost never had to deal with inside the octagon. His footwork allows him to circle out of pressure rather than getting trapped against the cage, which has traditionally been the first move in how Makhachev breaks opponents down. His reach and distance let him break fighters apart from range long before they can ever close in enough to threaten a clinch, and his numbers support all of it. He lands well above 4 significant strikes every minute at a strong accuracy rate. The type of consistent output that piles up quickly over a full 25-minute fight if things remain anywhere near striking range. If there's a scenario where Garry controls distance, makes Makhachev come to him, and racks up damage without ever getting comfortable up close, that's the version of this fight several well-respected MMA voices believe could genuinely carry him to the final horn. Then there's a piece of Garry's history that doesn't get enough attention. Plenty of people question whether his takedown defense is legitimate or simply hasn't been tested against the very best, but it absolutely has been tested against elite-level pressure. In a defeat against Shavkat Rakhmonov, one of the most fearsome grapplers in the entire weight class, Garry lasted the full 5 rounds and remained competitive from start to finish. Combining his bouts against Rakhmonov and ex-champion Belal Muhammad, he successfully stuffed 15 of 17 takedown attempts. That's not a fighter who crumbles under wrestling pressure. That's a fighter equipped with a defensive skill set genuinely designed to withstand exactly the type of threat Makhachev brings to the table. Now let's flip to the other side of this, because the analytical case in this fight still tilts heavily in the champion's favor, and it isn't especially close. Makhachev's game has never revolved around securing one clean takedown and cruising from there. It's about smothering an opponent completely. He relies on positioning, constant pressure, and patience, grinding a fighter down round by round until either their legs fail, their mental composure breaks, or both. His striking has become one of the sport's most underappreciated weapons, largely because everyone's attention stays fixed on his grappling. He uses his hands and legs to close ground and set up entries, meaning even something as simple as his jab is doubling as a wrestling setup. That's an incredibly tough problem to solve when you're simultaneously trying to defend range on the feet. His takedown foundation also stems from a background outside of standard collegiate wrestling, meaning his entries don't resemble the textbook double leg everyone practices against in training. He generates angles off of strikes, off the clinch, and off scrambles, making him significantly harder to prepare for and far tougher to simply outmaneuver with footwork alone. And once the fight reaches the mat, his control has proven strong enough to neutralize elite grapplers and dangerous strikers alike, which is exactly why the prevailing opinion among analysts breaking down this fight keeps returning to one central idea. Garry needs to win this on the feet, because almost nobody in the sport believes he wants to discover what a 4th round feels like beneath a fully locked-in Islam Makhachev. Islam's most obvious road to victory is probably the most foreseeable one in the entire sport right now, and that's precisely why it continues to succeed. Trap him against the cage, eliminate Garry's angles, force the clinch, and drag him into territory where he still has considerably less proven experience compared to open space. Garry's most obvious road runs in nearly the reverse direction. Stay composed, stay at range, sidestep entries rather than attempting to muscle through them, and construct a scorecard advantage through volume and precision, banking on a frustrated champion eventually forcing the issue and exposing himself in the process. Neither route is guaranteed on paper, but both are solid enough that serious figures within the sport are treating this as an authentic stylistic chess match rather than a standard title defense. That really sums up the entire fight in a single sentence. Can Garry's footwork win a distance battle against a fighter this gifted at closing angles and pressing forward? Can he land enough clean shots from the outside to make Makhachev cautious before the champion ever gets his hands on him? And if Makhachev does manage to trap him against the fence, does that elite 80% takedown defense hold up under sustained positional pressure? Garry genuinely hasn't encountered anything like this before in his career. Those are the 3 deciding factors for UFC 330, and nobody credible in this sport is claiming they already have all the answers. There's far more than just a championship belt on the line here. If Makhachev struggles, even in a fight he ultimately wins, it opens up a legitimate discussion about whether this dominant streak finally has a limit, especially given how recently he jumped up an entire weight class to pursue this challenge in the first place. And if Garry genuinely pulls off the upset, he doesn't simply become champion. He becomes the biggest headline in the entire sport overnight. The man who defeated the fighter that numerous legends, Jones included, currently regard as the best on the planet. So where does the actual prediction land? Garry's path is legitimate. His footwork is legitimate. His resilience against elite wrestling pressure is legitimate, and none of that is manufactured just to add drama to a championship bout. But when you combine the full picture, the countless ways Makhachev can engineer a takedown, the underrated boxing that sets up those entries, his experience in championship rounds, and a level of positional dominance that has worn down almost everyone who's ever faced him, the analytical advantage still leans toward the champion eventually breaking through. Most likely somewhere near the midpoint of the fight, once he begins timing Garry's movement and pulling this into exactly the kind of grueling, high-pressure battle Garry has said he wants no part of. That doesn't make this outcome a foregone conclusion, and it doesn't mean Garry can't be the one to flip the script. It simply means the tougher path in this fight belongs to the challenger. So here's the real question heading into August 15th. Do you believe Ian Garry genuinely has the footwork and toughness needed to keep this fight standing long enough to reveal something in Islam Makhachev that no one else ever has? Or does the champion eventually corner him against the cage and turn this into yet another chapter of the same dominant narrative? Leave your prediction in the comments. And if you want more fight week breakdowns, reactions, and predictions like this, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next.